2017 iPad 9.7 versus iPad Pro 10.5 coming up right now. Let's go. So what is up guys, Nick here helping you to master your technology, and welcome to the 2017 Apple iPad Budget Edition $329 to start versus the 10.5 inch iPad Pro that was just announced just a little bit ago here at WWDC. In this video I'm going to compare them and share with you 10 of my experiences with both of them, as well as throwing a little performance test in the middle of this video to help you guys decide which one is the better option for you, or if you want to upgrade from your $329 iPad to the $700 iPad Pro. Alright guys, so let's begin with talking about durability between the iPad 2017 and the iPad Pro 10.5. So the first thing you're going to notice if you get either one of these is they both feel extremely good in the hand. Now the aluminum on the iPad for the 9.7 inch here, the 2017 edition, feels just as good as this one here. Now one thing I do notice in my experience is that this is definitely a little thicker. It feels a little chunkier and heavier on this iPad versus the thin and very reduced bezels here of the 10.5 inch edition iPad. So definitely this one feels like a little bit more premium overall, but in terms of just the feel in the hand, I don't think anybody's going to notice a difference between that, and most of us are probably going to throw a case on either one of these anyway, so this is not a deciding factor between buying one of these. But just know, even if you go with the $329 edition, that doesn't make it feel $300 cheaper than the $700 iPad here. So yeah, durability about a draw. I should mention one thing though. There is a camera protruding on the 10.5 inch iPad here, and this one is kind of flush with the design, so I definitely like that design a little bit better here. But there's one thing on this iPad that this iPad doesn't have, and that is that the glass is the screen is behind the glass here, and this one is laminated, and you can kind of see it in the camera. You see how dark this is? That's because the screen is right up against the glass, laminated to the display. Right here it's behind the glass, so it's a little tiny detail here and there, but definitely you can notice that when using these day to day. So since we were just talking about those displays, how do they perform? Well, this one definitely gets a lot brighter here for the 10.5, but it's not like this one is like dark or something. This one gets extremely bright as well. Now the ProMotion display on the 10.5 definitely shows in the real world 120 Hz refresh rate, so definitely feels smoother and slicker than the iPad 9.7. But I do have to say that the 9.7 offers quite a bit of bang for buck for its price point. It feels really fast with its A9 CPU. But other than that, they both have 264 pixels per inch. There's a different resolution here on the iPad Pro 10.5, but over here on the 9.7, it's pretty much just as sharp. So reading experience is going to be about the same, but the lamination to the glass in True Tone on the iPad 10.5 definitely lends to a better device for reading in dark areas, and when you get in different lighting conditions, the iPad Pro is going to give you a better display. So yeah, the display is a win for the iPad Pro. So if you're going for just purely an iPad for the best display, you have to skip the $329 and go for the iPad Pro. But if you don't care too much about that, you just want a sharp display, rest assured both are going to give you a great display. Alright, so what about their specs here? So I'm only going to talk the key specs that matter here for these devices. This has an A9 CPU with 2 gigs of RAM and the same GPU that was found in the iPhone 6s. Now this guy right here is pretty much all the same specifications that you can find on the iPhone 7, including the GPU, but it also gives you a newer GPU that is a little bit more upgraded, more graphics, as well as an A10X. So it's like the iPhone 7 internals on steroids basically. That's the iPad 10.5 right here. So definitely the monster in speed, and in performance we'll check it out later, but it definitely feels slicker and faster than this. So if you're going straight heavily for performance, those are great specs there. Now the cameras are another thing I want to mention. They're kind of important specs here. This is going to be the same camera as found in the iPhone 7 as well as on the front. Now on this $329 edition, this is very close to what we found on the iPhone 6 smartphones, which weren't bad cameras, so for that price point it is acceptable. You are going to get second gen Touch ID for the 10.5 and first gen Touch ID here for the $329 edition. Both do have Apple Pay, so those are the specs that really matter here. You get 4 speakers here on the 10.5. You only get 2 speakers here. You do get higher storage capacities here, all the way up to 512 gigabytes, and on this guy you only get up to 128 gigabytes. So you have to decide what specs matter more to you, but those are the specs there. The iPad Pro definitely is a monster over this iPad in specs. Now, in terms of those cameras, I did talk a little bit about them earlier, about the protruding hump and as well what kind of camera we get in here. And this definitely does shine a lot over this iPad. This iPad's camera is basically what you would expect on a tablet. Decent, but not amazing. This actually has a pretty amazing camera on this tablet. I don't see many people actually going to be taking photos with this thing, but just know that if you're deciding to pick up one of these for the camera department, you're definitely going to be much happier here with this camera on this iPad right here. This also does 4K recording in slow-mo just like your iPhone. So you could actually run a whole YouTube channel straight off of this iPad, no problem, with its camera, with all its power and the video applications like LumaFusion. So definitely I think this is the guy to go with if you care about the camera. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and run a performance test here between both devices. Like I say, 4 gigs of RAM on the 10.5 inch, and we have 2 gigs of RAM here on the 9.7 inch. So you can see everything is closed out here. Let's go ahead and begin with calendar. And I missed that one on the iPad 10.5. These are kind of far away from me. It looks close on camera, but they're kind of far. Let's do calendar right there again. You can see about the same, but I do think that the 10.5 is slightly ahead. We would have to slow the video down to see it though. Let's go into settings here. And you can see 10.5 a little bit ahead. Let's go into clock here on both devices. And you could see a little bit ahead there on the iPad 10.5. Going into the App Store, definitely ahead there for the 10.5, a lot right there. So a monster in performance there. Let's go into the clips. And I would expect the performance to get better on the 10.5 as the iOS 11 comes out. So that's really what we're waiting for here with the 10.5. Pages. And Pages is first on, this is about the same there actually. Let's go into Instagram on both devices. And you can see Instagram loads about even. I'd call it this one here for the 10.5. Let's go into YouTube. Missed that one on the 9.7, so that ain't fair. Let's go ahead and do this again. Coming home here. Let's go into YouTube on both. And you can see YouTube ready to go first on the 10.5. So showing that it is a faster device. 10.5 again. Let's go into Amazon. It should be the 10.5 again. So yes, 10.5 again. And all these little milliseconds are going to add up to feel like a more buttery experience, especially with that 120 hertz display plus the speed increase that we're seeing right here. Let's go into Speed Racing, or Real Racing 3, excuse me. Let's go into Real Racing 3. And now we're getting into more of a game. So this should show if it's got more GPU power, which it definitely does. They say 12 core graphics. They say 50% faster than last year's iPad Pro. So you can see well ahead here and already in the game. So gamers, if you game on the iPad, if you're an iPad gamer, you're definitely going to like the performance increase you're going to get over here over pretty much any other iPad or iOS device on the planet. So you see well ahead of this iPad here in terms of load times. Not too much like it's going to change your life, but definitely enough to say that if you want the best performance, pick this iPad up over here. So Balls is ready to go first on the 10.5. What about Subway Surfers? Let's see what happens. Subway Surfers Peru. You could see just the loading time just way ahead here of the iPad 9.7, and that should hold true as well as in 4K exporting and stuff like that when you're video editing or photo editing. Let's go into Apple Store. Again with the Pro. So this is what we wanted to see. This is what Apple claims, a much faster tablet, and you're getting it here. It was proven right here. What about the multitasking here on both devices? Again, super smooth. You do see a little bit of choppiness on the multitasking here when you compare it to this smooth 120 hertz right here on the iPad 10.5. So I'm calling the performance win to the 10.5 easily. So in terms of battery life, definitely the iPad Pro 10.5 in my experience has lasted longer than the 9.7. This guy is getting me right around 14 hours. This guy is getting me right around 12 hours. So about 2 hours difference, I think, in my personal experience on the iPad Pro 10.5 inch here on this guy. So this is definitely the iPad I would go with if you want longevity and battery life. If you want the best battery life on any iPad, I would go with the new 12.9 inch that just came out alongside of this guy right here. So with all this efficiency, a large battery, this is the guy to go with. Just remember though, that this iPad is going to be pretty slow in the charging department in comparison to other Android devices that have fast charging and stuff like that. So I really want to see fast charging in the future. Apple, if you're listening, take some notes with your Apple Pencil. We want fast charging. Alright guys, so who is the 9.7 iPad for? Well, this is for anybody who wants an extremely affordable but very fast and very efficient iPad that does the basics and does them perfectly. That is you right there for the iPad. Or you're on a budget, you're just not in the price range of this iPad. This is just a little bit too high for you, or you just don't care for all those extra features. You don't need a flash, you don't need the video edit on this guy, you don't need the photo edit. I really don't recommend you get this Pro unless you're actually going to utilize the features to the best of your ability on this device. It really is an unnecessary purchase because this guy can do everything that main iPad tasks are going to do and do them pretty well. And this is also going to run iOS 11. Thumbs up if you want to see the iOS 11 video with the iPad 2017 later this year. So the iPad 10.5 is for the person who's the professional. They're trying to throw another, product into their tool bucket of things to do, use with their creative profession, whatever they're doing, graphic design, video editing. Yes, video editing can be done on here if you know what you're doing. It's a little bit more workaround than working on a computer, but this thing outbenches a lot of laptops that come in right around $600-700. So definitely this could get by as a really work powerhouse tablet here, but it's going to get better with the file system. Right now there is some things that you need to do, like you need to get an SD adapter to the lightning port, you need to use cloud storage a little bit here to make it work pretty good, and also you're gonna have some little issues you're gonna run into here and there. You're gonna have to learn how to use the iPad. You're gonna have to get a keyboard to get a little bit more productive on here, and there's no cursor control yet for the iPad, so definitely that is a question of debate, but I do think you can get a lot done here on the 10.5, and this iPad I would recommend to that person who's trying to have one of the most powerful devices they can. And you better be using this a lot if you're going to purchase an iPad at $700-800 for an iPad. This is not the lowest price point. You can almost get a Mac at those prices. So that pretty much wraps it up for me of the 2017 iPad versus the iPad Pro 10.5. I told you my experience. I showed you which one was faster, which one is going to be the better option for you by talking about which one this is for and who this is for right here. But what are your thoughts on this down below? Leave your feedback, comments, questions, videos you'd like to see on these guys, either one of these, separate, together, whatever. And thumbs up if you enjoyed it, share the video if you loved it, and subscribe for more. Nick here helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well, and peace.